Well, I was born in Fort Monroe, Virginia, 1929.
Edith Donaldson is born into a military family. 3 years later, her sister Verna's born. And in 1936, the whole family relocate to Honolulu, Hawaii, which was not yet a state.
When you were in Honolulu, how old were you?
At that time, let me see, Honolulu, I went to school first grade. So whatever you are in first grade.
So what are your memories of traveling there and being there, being so young?
Oh, we went over before. Now my father knew the engineer on the Golden Gate Bridge. So we went over and it hadn't been built yet. And when we came back from Honolulu 2 years later, it was built. And everybody screamed and hollered when we went under the bridge. And they sent an etching of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's signed by Strauss, and it's in my sister's house.
Edith and her family resumed life in the U.S. But in 1941, global events shift their fate.
The war started, and so they immediately got a hold of my father and sent him on the first convoy to Australia. And in Australia, they made him a general in charge of the American forces in Australia. And then my mother, who was of course very depressed that he was leaving, had to pack up all our furniture and everything else, and we moved to New York because my mother's father was getting Alzheimer's, and he had a whole lot of money. And they were worried that he might marry, so somebody might talk him into getting married, and all this money would be going down the tube. So they had to go to New York to declare him incompetent. And we rented an apartment in a suburb called Larchmont. So I graduated about 1946. And by that time, the war was over. And we waited. Daddy had to clean up things in Australia. He finally came home, and he wanted to be where there was a good college. So he went out to Seattle. Nobody ever heard of Seattle then. And they happened to have a very good university in Seattle. And so that's when I started. Oh, and Daddy saw to it that I got in because all the veterans were coming back that year. And he said I had to go into nursing or home ec. So I did. I went into home ec. And because the veterans weren't going into it. Otherwise, I couldn't have gotten in. So that's when I started the university.
Was that a big adjustment? That must have been a big adjustment, going from New York City, going from Larchmont to Seattle for you.
No, not really. I was used to moving around. Just the outfits were different. They wore different clothes than in New York. We had bobby socks and heavy sweaters and short pleated skirts. In Seattle, they had narrow skirts, only cashmere sweaters, and regular socks. And we were stationed at Fort Lawton, and my view was Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains, which were snow-covered. Beautiful view. Of course, I met a lot of people in college, and it was very nice.
What was the curriculum of studying home ec?
Oh, I started in home ec, and but I also had taken a course in psychology. So I decided, well, I would switch to a psych major. Well, the psych major only required 30 hours of psych. So I could take pretty much what I wanted. And it was great because it opened my eyes to a lot of areas that I knew nothing about, like rocks. I can look at a rock and tell you there are 3 different kinds, and I can tell you what they are. Ordinarily, I'd look at a rock and it was only a rock. And And the same was true of a lot of the other things that I took.
In 1948, during Edith's sophomore year in college, tragedy strikes the Donaldsons.
We had a boat. It was a 50-foot Chris craft. We were out with they were going to take a congressman out, and he canceled at the last minute. And one of my girlfriends from my sorority was there, and of course my parents. And Mother fell overboard, and we couldn't find her, and they looked around for her, but they couldn't find her. She had already died. That was a very sad situation, and my poor father really was very upset. Then we had the Coast Guard looking, and we looked, but we couldn't find her. My father continued without her. We stayed in the same house. And then one morning, my sister woke my dad up. I thought, oh, this is great. He's sleeping late for a change. Well, she couldn't get him up. So she called. We had a fellow that was a military person, non-commissioned officer. So she called him and told him to go in and check my father. And he found out he was dead. So then I was at college, and
Now, how much time had been between your mother's death and your father?
my mother died about around October 17th. My father died in December 8th. And so it was a very short time.
Edith and her sister Verna stay in Seattle after the death of their parents. Teenage Verna is taken in by a friend's family while Edith moves into the sorority house and finishes her studies. After graduation, Edith pursues her passion and heads to graduate school.
I went to graduate school, and it was a 2-year program for social work,
Now, how did you decide you wanted to be a social worker?
because I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and I didn't want to go to medical school.
So, in this time, this is like the 50s?
Yeah,
So, going to get your master's degree, a lot of women didn't do that, right? They just got married, or
Yeah,
going
no,
to get
oh,
your
yeah,
master's
that was the
degree
thing, you're supposed
and
to get-
having a career, it was a little bit outside of the box, right?
it was, yeah. They all wanted to get married before they finished college. And so it was, I was like an old maid.
Where did you meet your first husband?
Frank, where'd you meet Frank, Mom?
Oh, how did I meet him? Oh, that's right. I met him at the dental school. And we were married for a couple of years and got divorced. I presented him with divorce papers, and that was it. And I told him that and I had been supporting him financially, and I put in the thing that I would ask for alimony if he gave me a hard time with a divorce. Well, he didn't want to pay any alimony, so it was easy. And so that was the end of that.
So you were kind of an anomaly after a while. Like, you had a master's degree, you were a divorcee.
Yeah, which was not considered the best thing either.
Did that affect you, or?
No. And my father had always thought that education was the answer for everybody, and he thought it was good getting a master's degree. Now he had died years before, but I remember what he said. So I got the master's degree, and so that's how it worked out.
Edith starts a successful career in social work. While working in Boston, she meets Dr. Gil Friedman. They marry and move to Miami to start a family.
So how many kids do you have, Edith?
I have 3. I have Bruce, then I had about 5 miscarriages. And it turned out I had a very rare disease or something or other. So there didn't seem to be anything I could do about it. So finally, I adopted Michael, and I figured that's it, and that we had nothing else. And I was approaching a point where I was going to be too old to get pregnant anymore, so I forgot about the whole thing. And lo and behold, I got pregnant with Bonnie. Well, by that time, I'd learned that I better sleep when I was tired and pregnant, which I did. So she came out okay.
That's good.
Edith and Gil divorce after 23 years of marriage, and she resumes her social work practice until she retires.
You have a very wonderful sense of style and dress and comportment. Where do you think you got that from?
Oh, now my mother knew and my father, that I was taught table manners. My mother's family would not allow her to speak with the New York accent. They were very careful. I got it from my parents. And as far as dress goes, I wanted to be a dress designer. But my daddy said that, very wisely, that would be fine and dandy, but I should finish college first, and then I could go become a dress designer. He was smart.
And then you wish you were Lily Pulitzer.
Oh, yeah, I found an outlet for Lily Pulitzer. So I used to go to the outlet all the time and buy the Lily Pulitzer dresses. So I had a whole slew of them. And I had the St. John knits, which are the most expensive outfits you could get. A whole slew of those.
That looks like a St. John knit. What you're wearing now.
Yeah, this is a St. John knit.
Yeah.
And the
That looks
skirt's
like
a
it.
St. John
And they're
knit.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So Edith, we're talking about, your mother and then her sister, and obviously they both suffered from depression, but you're very upbeat.
I haven't always been. There have been times I've been depressed. But yeah, I'm upbeat. What the heck? Things seem to work out, yeah. And as it turns out, really things ended up okay. I'm happy the way I am. I'm quite content, and so that's good.